We just sold our house for sale by owner, and that decision almost cost us over $60,000. Now, I'm not saying that for shock value, that's the truth, but I wanted to walk you through how we almost lost that money and why I recommend that most people do work with an agent when they're selling their house. If we haven't met, my name is Rebecca Richardson, aka the Mortgage Mentor, and I share my years of experience and knowledge so you can make smart real estate decisions confidently. Be sure to subscribe so you can get all of the information that you need when it comes to real estate. So recently, my husband and I sold our Airbnb, and we decided not to use a listing agent. The reason that we did that is because between the two of us, we have years of experience both with mortgages, real estate, construction, and all of that. So we had a little bit of an unfair advantage and a little bit more of an advantage than the average seller would have. But through that process, I saw how easy it is for sellers to lose money. I'm sharing what happened because even when you know what happened, it's easy to miss things that could cost you a lot of money. So if you're thinking about selling your house without an agent to save on commission, what I have to say may make you think twice. Now, for some background, we built a home a few years ago thinking that possibly when our kids were graduated from school that we would move there. So we wanted to build ahead, and we used it as a vacation home for our family and also rented it out through Airbnb and Vrbo. And it did really well for us. I mean, it was the first time kind of dipping our toe in short-term rentals and property management and all of those things. And it did stay booked, but when we decided that we weren't going to be moving to that area anymore, it kind of became a drag because in the midst of our full-time jobs, we were also managing this property from 2 hours away and just decided that we didn't want to be in the hospitality business anymore. On top of that, I have over 20 years in the mortgage industry, and my husband has the same in construction. So we know more than the average bear does about how real estate works, construction, and all of those things. But when we decided that it was time to sell, the very first thing that we did was get an appraisal because I knew that I needed that baseline of what the home was actually worth. I might think I know what it's worth based off of what I'm seeing on Zillow or Realtor.com or anything like that. There are all these nuances of what a home is worth based off of the individual property details and current market data that I just don't have access to. So I wanted to turn to a professional so they could tell me what the home was worth. We got the report, and there's a little bit of a strategy sometimes with pricing properties is you may want to price it below a certain price threshold. When searches are set up, a lot of times they will be set at $100,000 increments, sometimes $50,000 increments. So it is possible to get more eyes on your listing if you price it below one of those price cutoffs. And it worked out really well for us because the home was beautiful. We had it ready to go. It was priced right. And we had multiple showings on the first day that the property was available, and even had an offer, or at least knew that we had an offer coming in by the end of that first day. We went into the negotiations as informed sellers, but this process did teach us how easy it is for stuff to slip through the cracks if you don't have a skilled professional in your corner looking out for you. So there's a saying in real estate that your first offer is your best offer. And it can be tempting to believe that. But the offer that we received came in over 3% under what our list price was. So we had already cut it a little bit off of the appraisal to get under that pricing threshold. I certainly didn't want to give another 3%. But without having the appraisal, without having that data that I knew that I could rely on, we might have taken it because it could be tempting to say, yep, let's just go ahead and wrap this up and let's get it done. Other thing to keep in mind is really the market kind of sets the price. You can list your house for whatever you want to list it for, but if you're not getting the buyer traffic, if you're not getting offers, then there's probably something, and it's not the condition of the property, then it could be that it's overpriced. And we didn't want to run that risk because I knew sometimes that leaving a property on the market for months and months and months, it can get difficult to get it sold because people think, what is wrong with it? So I had all of this going through my mind when we got that offer. But because we had the data and we had that appraisal value, we held our ground. And I'm not blaming the buyer's agent for this because she was just doing her job. She's trying to get her buyers a great deal. And we had to protect our own interests. What we did was we negotiated back and forth a little bit to make sure that we could arrive at a win-win that felt good for both parties. It worked in our favor because I had the confidence to counter because of the appraisal. But if we hadn't done that and took the first offer, we would have lost over $64,000 right off the top. That's the reason that current and accurate market data is so important because we can get tied into our homes emotionally, right? We had put so much effort into it. That's where we take our family. We had all these dreams. All this kind of stuff can sometimes cloud your judgment, but that's why it's so important to have that data because it gives you something that you can trust in. Now, the second lesson had to do with inspections. So this house had a septic inspection. I don't really have a lot of experience with septic because I'm a city girl, but we did have a septic on this home. And when the inspection was done, the inspector found that there were two things that were wrong. So he sent us the report telling us what needed to be fixed and that he could give an estimate for the repairs. So that repair estimate came in and it was over $2,500 to make these repairs. So just because you get a home inspection and there are repairs that the buyer is asking you to make, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make every single repair. Sometimes I've had them on homes that I've sold before and it was that a light bulb was burned out, right? So sometimes there's a lot of easy stuff that you can fix. But if there are more major things, then that's where as a seller, you have to decide, am I going to fix it? Do I want to give the buyer credit? Do I have to fix it? Do I have to fix it for the loan? Does it just have to be fixed to keep the transaction together? But also if you don't fix it and now you're aware of an issue, that can cause problems if you choose to relist your home or put it back on the market as well. So based off of, again, my experience in the mortgage industry and seeing all of these scenarios played out, I knew that the right thing and the thing that would keep everything moving would be to make this repair. However, I was trying to understand why this was coming up now because I thought, why wasn't this addressed when we installed it? Why, when it was inspected by the county, did this not come up? So my husband has years and years of experience in civil construction and had a good working relationship with the team that had built our house. So he reached out to the contractor that originally installed it and said, we got this inspection, kind of what's going on. This contractor who had originally installed the system said, there are a couple things going on here. One, there's not an issue with your system, right? So you're fine. It does meet standard. And my husband even spoke to the county who verified what the original contractor had said. But because it's a small community, when my husband was talking with the original contractor who had installed the system, he said, this isn't the first time that I've seen this come from this other septic company. And that it kind of seemed, I don't have all the details, but it kind of seemed like that there was a history of doing these inspections, coming back with some things that needed to be repaired. And lo and behold, that company could take care of those repairs. So it would be very profitable for them to find things when they're doing these inspections, which sounds like what happened to us because nothing was needed. So we let the buyers know the findings that we had, and we were able to come to an agreement that nothing was needed to be done. However, without trusted contacts or experience, this could be something that sellers would just simply take at face value. And if we had, that would have cost us over $2,500 in an unnecessary repair. But that one call to the original contractor who had installed it saved us thousands. Now, for the third lesson, something did come up on our final closing disclosure. Now, leading up to the closing, we were exhausted. We were trying to pack up an entire house, figure out where to move it, what was getting sold, what was getting put in storage, were we doing a storage shed, were we putting it in our garage, all of those kind of things, because it was a quick sale. And that was great for us. It just meant that we had a very compressed timeline. So when our closing disclosure, it came in pretty close to closing. So I skimmed it and I was like, yes, all the numbers are there. That looks right. That's about what I thought that we would net from the sale. So let's go. Once I actually had some time to look at the closing disclosure in detail, I realized that the property taxes were off. So we showed up to closing and I pointed this out to the closing attorney because in the state of South Carolina, taxes are different, whether it is a primary home or it's a second vacation rental or investment property. So the taxes are much higher if it's a second home or investment property than if it's a primary residence. The attorneys that I'm used to working with in South Carolina, they know that a buyer is purchasing a home as their primary residence. Therefore, they will calculate the taxes correctly with the lower rate, knowing that the tax bill that comes out for that year will show the primary residence reduced property taxes. That's not what happened here. So I pointed out to the attorney, he realizes the mistake, and then we wind up having several conversations through the closing of how these taxes needed to be held. Plus, there was an email after the closing giving those details in writing. So the tax bill was figured probably over about $9,000 for the year, when in reality, once it was turned into a primary residence, would be less than $5,000. What that meant for us is that at closing, because at closing, a seller is going to give the buyer a credit for their portion of that year's taxes, those prorated taxes. So our prorated taxes, as far as what we paid at closing, was, again, incredibly too high for what it should be for a primary residence. But we were already there. The closing package had been approved by the attorney. To keep everything on track, again, we had a conversation of how the buyer would be reimbursing us when the property bill came out. And when the property bill came out, indeed, it was about half of what was being calculated on that closing disclosure back in the summer. And as a result, that meant that we overpaid by over $5,000. What I saw there, as far as the lesson learned, is the benefit of having an agent looking out for you for things like that, understanding how processes like that work with prorated taxes, or making sure that all the credits that should be on a closing disclosure are, and that they're accurate. And if we didn't, again, have the experience or the knowledge that we have, then it would have been very easy to just proceed with what was shown on the closing disclosure, and we would have lost an additional $5,000 because even the attorney didn't catch it, but that is something that a listing agent would be paying attention to. So to sum it all up, we did go the for sale by owner route to save on commission because, again, we did have a little bit of an unfair advantage with our experience and knowledge within the industry. So we went for sale by owner to save on the listing agent's commission because, again, we had years and years of knowledge and experience. But without that combined experience, we could have lost more than we saved. A good agent doesn't just market your home. When you are dealing with real estate, you are making a major financial decision, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's important to have somebody in your corner who specializes in this, who knows what to look out for, who understands how to handle things when they come up with the inspection or things don't go according to plan, or frankly, just to be there as a second set of eyes to make sure that every number is correct, that the documents are correct, and that what you intend to happen does indeed happen. So my advice is, if you're selling your home, don't just focus on what the commission will be, and don't just think about what the costs would be. Think about what it could cost you if something slips through the cracks. If you found this helpful, please comment. Let me know if you would do a home for sale by owner, if you would never do a home for sale by owner. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.